Since God is sovereign, how can man be free? That is a big question that we're going to try to answer here in this short video. So let's start by laying some foundations. And the first one we're going to lay is that the Bible is full of declarations and assertions that God is ultimately sovereign. That means that He is the one who rules over the universe, and He is the one who gets to decide what happens in the universe, and He's the only one with ultimate power and authority. In Colossians 1, we read that He created all things, and He created everything in the universe for Himself and through Himself. In Hebrews 1, we read that He sustains the world, the universe, by the word of His power. Psalm 147, it says that His understanding and His power has no limits. Jeremiah 32 says that nothing is too hard for God. 1 Chronicles 29 says that He is the head and the ruler of all things, and only He has the power to give strength. In Job 42, it says that no purpose of God's can be thwarted. And in Psalm 135, it says that He does whatever pleases Him in the heavens and the earth, and in the seas and in all their depths. And on the list goes throughout the Bible of all the things that God does in this world. And so the natural next step then, another foundation we can lay, is that since God is sovereign, He is ordering and causing all things in the universe. He sets the stars in their courses. He sends the rain and the snow. He causes the doe to give birth, it says in the Psalms, and for the lion to hunt its prey. He causes all of these things. So God causes all things in the universe, and including us and our lives even. Daniel chapter 2 says that He sets up kings and He takes down kings. He gives wisdom to the wise. And Proverbs 16 says that a man plans his way in his heart, but the Lord is the one who determines his steps. And also in Proverbs 21 it says that the king's heart is as a stream of water in the Lord's hand. God directs it wherever He will. So included in the number of things that God is sovereign over, number of things that He rules over, we can include us and our lives, you and me. So then the question becomes, if God is ultimately sovereign, what implication does that have on human free will? Is man actually free to make choices? Does he have a free will? Well, I would say yes and no. Yes, to the extent that God has given us a will to make choices and to make decisions. And we know this because the Bible tells us that we are ultimately responsible. We're going to be held accountable for the decisions that we make and the actions that we perform. Romans 14 says that each of us was going to give an account to God. And in Matthew 12, Jesus tells us that we will give an account for every careless word that we have spoken. So to some degree, we have responsibility for the choices that we make. We are responsible. And if we are responsible, then we must have at least some degree of free will to make decisions. So in one sense, God has given to us the freedom to be able to make moral decisions. We are moral free agents. But in another sense, no, we are not free. We are not free to decide whatever we want because, remember, God is ultimately sovereign. His will and authority are the final decisions. We don't get to overturn or override God's will. God will not allow us to make decisions or to take actions that are outside of His will. The classic biblical example, of course, is Jonah. Jonah attempted to act outside of God's sovereign will, and he learned the hard way that such a thing is really impossible. God always gets His way no matter what. Jonah was free to choose whether or not to go to Nineveh, and he chose not to, but Jonah not going to Nineveh was not part of God's sovereign will, so guess what? Jonah went to Nineveh. So in this sense, we are not free because the sovereignty of God will always get the final word. Now, the natural next question to that then would be, if everything that happens is God's will, then how do we explain the evil things that happens? Is the evil in the world God's will? And if it is, then how can God be good? Well, that's another big question, too big to answer in this video. So if you want it answered, you should go to riverviewbaptist.net/ask-anything and ask it. We'll attack that in another video. But then in response to this reality that God's will is final and ultimate and human will is not final nor ultimate, the heart of the Christian then is to discern God's sovereign will so that we can use the freedom that God has given us to think and to be able to live and act according to God's sovereign will. God's will is perfect, and it is my desire as a Christian then to conduct my life according to his sovereign will. As a Christian, I am no longer a slave to sin, but a slave to righteousness. So I want to use my freedom that God has given me to honor him and to become like him in my life.